It's Wednesday, the 3rd of May 2017. It's 8:45pm, and for the first time this off-season, it's the Cats Whiskers Podcast live. Hello and welcome to an off-season edition of the Cats Whiskers Podcast. My name is Jono Bullard. Got an absolutely packed show for you tonight, and we'll start with all the latest Panthers news, including the signings of Josh Tetlow and Jordan Kelsall earlier today, as well as looking at some of the departures from last season's roster, also the CIHL draw, and we'll discuss a little bit about the Panthers survey that Paul did for us last week. We'll also be talking Team GB winning gold in the World Championships, and we have an interview with former Panther and favourite Evan Mosey coming up a little later. We'll discuss the new conferences that were revealed for the Elite Ice Hockey League last week, and we'll also be talking to Anthony Russell from the Banners on the Wall podcast about the disbanding of the English Premier League and the teams moving into the National Ice Hockey League. So that is coming up a little later. But first, it's time to introduce my fellow panellists this evening. Tina Taylor.
Hiya.
Antoine Marijon.
Hello, good evening, and how the hell are you?
I'm very well, thank you. And Andy Haywood will be around. He's got a little issue at home at the minute, but he will be with us as soon as he can be. So I'm just waiting on his message, so Andy will be able to join in with us as well. So we're going to start by looking at the Panthers news from, well, since really the end of the season. But the main news is that 2 new British signings were announced today. Yay for announcing signings just before a podcast is about to go live. So thank you very much, Nottingham Panthers, for that one. It would normally be announced on Thursday, knowing our luck, but we can talk about it here. So 2 new signings. Josh Tetlow, a 19-year-old 6'6" defenceman who will be joining from the Bracknell Bees. And Jordan Kelsall, a 17-year-old Nottingham-born forward, has played with Swindon Wildcats and the Okanagan Hockey Academy this past season. And a young lad I actually got to see play a couple of weeks ago when I was commentating on the Rob Laidler Plate in Swindon. So before I sort of wax lyrical about Jordan Kelsall, Josh Tetlow will start with. And I think you're quite impressed with this signing.
I love the fact that we've signed a British kid who is 6'6", and by the looks of his stats from last season, isn't afraid to drop his mitts. I mean, there's a video on YouTube if anyone wants to watch it, where he actually takes on former Devil Doug Clarkson, who I had the fortune of booing quite vociferously when I went to watch Hull this season. It was quite a good laugh. But no, it's Andy's mentioned it a couple of times. I'd really like us to make a play for Josh Batch, but what I think we've got here is somebody very similar in stature, but obviously younger, and we've got a chance here to sort of mould a player who has, by all accounts, obviously they're not going to come out and say, oh yeah, we've just signed him because we've got to sign under 23 players, but Corey's obviously spoken very highly of him. He's working, it's a work in progress. And somebody mentioned on the cage, I think it was, that if Corey does a similar job that he with Tetlow that he did with Lapine, then what a potential signing this could be. I mean, we've been crying out for someone, just a no nonsense stay at home D-man, and now we've got a British kid. Fantastic.
I mean, Tina, your thoughts on Tetlow, just from what you've seen, because you've done, as usual, you've done a little bit of research.
Well, yeah, just a bit, I've sort of gone off and just done a bit of numbers. I mean, obviously the first thing that hits you like a train is last season 155 penalty minutes. Now that is that's a little bit eye-watering. There's only one person on the Panthers team who got more than that last season. I think we all know who that is. So yeah, like Ant says, not afraid to drop him if needs be. Seems to be more of a stay-at-home defenseman. He's not much into the points, but I mean that's absolutely fine by me. I'm really not worried about that at all. And I mean, just sort of in general with the signings, I'm absolutely made up that we have taken this more as an opportunity than treating it as something that's kind of hanging around our necks, and almost being a burden. Because, and I'm really sorry to go off topic so early, but this sort of appears to me to feel like when I first started watching the Panthers, and what one of the things that Corey Nielsen appeared to do really, really well when I first started watching. I mean, I've been watching the Panthers a lot less than everybody else on the podcast, so I only remember Corey Nielsen as a coach, and when I first started watching, he was bringing the young kids in. Rob Lakovich was a young kid when I first started watching. There was Josh Ward, Tom Norton. We had fleeting appearances from the likes of Tom Saw, William Weldon. I saw Ollie Bettridge's first game in a Panthers jersey, so that's. And I'm sure there's a lot of other people who can remember that, but that's in my early days, and it was something that. It gave me a lot of pride in the Nottingham Panthers, in the fact that we were nurturing this young talent. We were doing our bit for the British game, for the British players, and giving them that opportunity. So I'm really glad that the Panthers have approached it like that, and I really hope that these two guys can progress. In the manner that they want to. I really hope they're given the opportunity, the ice time, and the responsibility. And it looks like, just to return to topic, that we have signed a couple of guys who have got some genuine prospects. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing how these guys get on.
Yeah. So the other signing, Jordan Kelsall, as I said, a Nottingham-born forward, 17 years old. I saw him play the weekend before last in the Rob Laidler Plate for the Okanagan Hockey Academy against Sheffield in the final, but also in their semi-final as well. Kelsall's the captain of the Okanagan under 18 teams, and he is a leader in every sense of the word of that team. He brings his teammates into the play. He's brilliant on the puck. He's got good hands. He fights for the puck in the corners. He's got a good shot. I think with a bit of moulding, we could have a really top British player on our hands here. And okay, admittedly, I've seen him in 2 games, but for both games, for me, he stood out both times. He's had a line mate, Michael Power, and the sort of telepathy between them was incredible. They just played so well together. So I've got really, really high hopes for Jordan Kelsall coming into this Panthers team. Admittedly, he may not get too many shifts to start with, but I think if he can certainly show what he showed me the other weekend, then I think he will see his ice time increasing as the season goes on, and obviously as his confidence grows. And I think what an opportunity for a young Nottingham lad, who I believe is a Panthers fan, to come in at 17 years old and play for the Panthers. Just stuff dreams are made of. But and what do you think of Kelsall on first viewing?
I mean, obviously, I've not seen him play like you have. You can only go on stats. I mean, to be named captain of any team is obviously a big deal. Anyway, and just looking at his stats in just the last 3 seasons alone for Okanagan. I mean, 54 points in 18 games last year, 27 goals, 27 assists. Season before, 46 points in 20 games, 13 goals, 33 assists. I mean, that they're not too shabby. I know you're talking that there's a massive gap between under 18s hockey and the Elite League, but just what sort of confidence that would bring to the table as well. Obviously played fair few shifts in the EPL last season for Swindon. It's really exciting. It's just a really exciting couple of signings for me, and something I think we've been crying out for a couple of years. And yeah, fair play Panthers. And by all accounts, going back to Tetlow just briefly, Bracknell's fans are absolutely devastated that they've lost him. But let's hope they're not like the Gap fans with a certain former player of ours.
Yeah, just be careful. Just be careful when you're accepting praise from former teams. We've been burnt before.
Yeah.
Moving swiftly on, Tina. So, Kelsall, your thoughts?
Yeah, again, not having had the benefit of seeing him play, the stats is really only what I can go for. So it seems to be maybe not a polar opposite of Tetlow, but he's more on the skill sort of range than he is, on the brute sort of side of it. So. I think we're going to see some energy, and I think we're going to see we may see some goals. Who knows? Give him the opportunity, get him in the right places, and if he can make the adjustment well from the level that he's been at to the level that he's coming to, then it's who knows. I'm like Anne. I'm really excited by these two signings. I think this is something. On the face of it, from what we initially know, having had maybe a few hours to digest it, I think, the Panthers have done well here. So I think we've got some reasons to be excited. Whether or not they feature much in the CIHL, who knows? We'll have to see how that goes. But domestically, I think, if they really sort of focus and get themselves, apply themselves really well. I think we're in for a decent season from our under 23s in general. Betteridge included, I think.
Just talking to Betteridge, because obviously nothing's been said about whether Ollie will be coming back or not. Do you expect him to be back?
If he's not going to be back, I'd like to think he's going to go abroad and try his skills. I would hate to think we're going to lose him to another elite league team. And I think with we're going to talk about this more later, but with the sort of demise of the EIHL as it is, I think that sort of option is maybe that's been taken away from him. If that was ever under consideration, I think we'd be bonkers to let him go, unless he was going on to something bigger and better to try his luck abroad. There's not been anything said, but also as well the two that we've announced signing today sort of makes you think that the third space is Betteridge's. I would like to think so, because logically speaking, I would like to think that if we were signing three brand new under 23s and Betteridge was going to be leaving us, I would really like to think that we'd be, that we'd have been announcing the three on the same day. But so that's my only logic for thinking in that sort of fashion. I would like to think Betteridge is coming back.
I'm delighted to welcome Andy Haywood to the table.
Hi.
Just quickly, we're just discussing Jordan Kelsall and Josh Tetlow's signing. So your thoughts very quickly.
Ultimately, I'm not going to lie, I know very little about either of them, but I certainly get the impression that Corey seems pretty excited by them, and obviously, going on people that have seen either or. They seem pretty impressed by it as well. So, I'm sure it'll only be a good thing. At the end of the day, they're both young, and they've been given a very good opportunity. As I think it was Kelsall tweeted, saying that he's thankful for the opportunity. So I'd like to think that that with that in mind, they'll be looking to really make a name for themselves in this push up to a higher standard to what they've been used to.
Yeah, absolutely. So, leaving the new signings aside, we're going to talk about some of the departures. So, several players have been announced as leaving the Panthers from last season's roster, including Mick Viekman, Chris Lawrence and Brad Moran, with rumours around other players such as Alex Nikiforuk, Stephen Schultz, Jeff Dimon and Jeff Waugh. It seems to have been a strange reaction to a lot of this, I found, because we talked all season that we thought that the team should probably be decimated after such a disappointing season. but there seems to be a lot of angst and wailing and gnashing about the number of players leaving. And Andy, I know it was something that you brought up on social media.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, everyone's going to have their favourite players, and you know, I'm not going to lie. As much as, you know, getting rid of everyone and starting afresh is sort of my preference, as it were. I can appreciate that some people would like to see certain players back, and I appreciate that obviously some people have their favourites and they'll be disappointed when they're announced that they're not coming back. But I do think that the sort of the general sort of feeling of sort of upset and in some cases anger about the fact that we've not announced any signings, sort of obviously apart from the two today, just seems to baffle me a little bit. You know, I saw something on a I believe it was on Panthers Facebook page. They'd posted something and a fan had come back saying something along the lines of "I don't care, just announced some signings already." And I had a look at the teams out there that are in the league, and apart from Sheffield, who've been really active in re-signing a lot of their players, a lot of teams have only got a couple of players so far, and every single one of them to a man has been a re-signing. This was going back a couple of weeks ago, so that it might have changed now. But obviously, it was predominantly re-signings or all re-signings, and obviously, our issue is that we don't really want any re-signings returning, bar a couple that I think people, the general consensus of someone like a Jeff Brown or a McGrattan, perhaps. I can appreciate that a lot of people would be favourable for that, and to a certain extent, I appreciate that Weekman, possibly, if he came back, I wouldn't have been disappointed.
I must admit, I think Weekman was the one that I was a bit upset about, purely from the fact that I still think he's got a lot to offer, and he was voted the MVP of the team. He saved us a lot last season.
Yeah.
I mean, he certainly wasn't the reason why we had such a poor domestic season, and in the Continental Cup he was absolutely outstanding. So I was a little bit disappointed about Mika Weekman, but to be honest, I mean, Jeff Brown and Dan Spank are assumed to be back on the second year of uni deals, which is fine. The noises that Brian McGrattan is making suggest that he probably won't be back. And to be honest, apart from that, I'll be honest, I don't think I'll be too disappointed if none of the imports come back from that group last season.
That's certainly my stance. Yeah, I just think that we've been. This season just gone, we had a fair core of the players from the season previous. And we weren't overly great that year. We re-signed a load of them, and we weren't great last year. To me, it makes sense and it's logical that it is time to cut ties and start afresh. And I think realistically, I'd be very surprised if that wasn't Corey's philosophy. I think by the Brits, and I think ultimately because of the argument of if you are going to get rid of all of our Brits, who do you replace them with? I would be surprised if there's many more than 3 max returnees. Obviously, I know Nielsen's mentioned that he'd like Williams back, and obviously there's the guys on the two-way, but I can't really see anybody else being on that list, if I'm honest.
Okay, Tina, I mean, your thoughts on the group that are leaving, and who do you think any of them will be back?
Well, I mean, I was Eric Lindhagen's sponsor last season. I did have a cheeky word in his ear at the awards night, just say, what's going on next season. And he said, don't know. I said, do you want to come back? And he said, I'd quite like to. He likes the city, etc., etc. I would be quite happy to see him come back. Like you, I was a bit disappointed that Weekman wasn't going to give it another season. But on the other hand, he's had a a couple of spells of injury which have maybe sort of highlighted a bit of a frailty that we really could do without if we're going to, have a decent push at a domestic season and couple that with the CHL. We need stability in every way, really. So it's a disappointment for him, for Wheatman, I would say. But I think there's been an awful lot of the imports that have either disappointed or have just had long spells of injury and haven't been able to get back into it. And it's, I think most of us on the podcast now have got the benefit of having seen people come and go. We've seen imports come and go. We know what's coming. You come to March, you get to playoff weekend, and and then you sort of settle yourself in for your Cheerios and your returnees and what have you. I think. I mean, I don't know if it's just me. I mean, we've obviously seen the crowds go up this season, so it's reasonable to assume we have got a lot of new fans who just aren't used to it. They just don't know. There's a lot, probably a lot more stability year on year when it comes to football, for example, than there is in British ice hockey. You get players coming backwards and forwards all the time in British ice hockey. It's not quite the same for other sports in this country, I would say. So it is probably a little bit of I won't say anomaly for want of a better word. So if you're a new fan coming into this sport, you're probably not used to it. And I think, coupled with the meteoric rise of social media, everybody gets a voice. So I think we hear about it a lot more as well. So I think there's an awful lot of factors involved in this. But yeah, in terms of what what we kind of know is coming back and what we who we know isn't, I mean, obviously there's still a little bit of uncertainty. I mean, like, for example, I was under the impression, like quite a few people, that McGrattan was on a 2-year deal, but obviously with his various interviews he's been doing back at home in Canada, that would appear to still be under discussion. So I don't know. I mean, when we've had it good, the coaching staff have managed to bring in some real gems. And I mean, even when we haven't had it particularly good, there's still been the odd gem here and there. But we've had some good players. So I think it's reasonable to assume that, coupled with last year and the CHL that we're going to be taking on next season, it's reasonable to assume that we're going to be getting an upgrade in all areas, I would say. And just off the top of my head, just to close out what I started with, I would probably say that of the unconfirmed, Lindhagen's probably the only one I'd want to see come back.
Okay, and who would you like to see come back, if anyone?
Probably Lindhagen, of those that aren't announced, and definitely McGrattan. The rest of them, if there's upgrades available, I think we need to. We've not had a great couple of seasons, with the core of that team. So you've got to improve on it, surely. I mean, other teams are going to be improving. We've got the Champions Hockey League to compete in next season. Don't get me wrong, I don't think we're going to go out and win it, but it'd be nice to at least not get blown away in all of our games.
2 wins, Ant. That's all we want. 2 wins.
2 wins. I want 6 wins and get us top of that group. Next rate, it's not going to happen.
Wake up, and he's back in the room.
But, I know we're going to move on to it with the structure changes, but our conference next season is going to be an absolute killer. So we need to be signing in top class, hungry, decent players. And,
unbreakable players.
Yeah, ones that aren't going to go on the treatment table every 2 minutes, please.
Okay, moving on from the Panthers' comings and goings, the CHL, Champions Hockey League seeding pots were announced earlier this week. Panthers are the 32nd seed out of all 32 teams, but if you remember the first season, they were the bottom seed then and proved everybody wrong. The Cardiff Devils will be the 29th seed. The draw is on the 17th of May. Just very quickly, who would you like to get in that draw? Andy, I'll start with you.
Frölunda for me.
it'd be nice to have a go against the champions. I can't see us coming out of it well, but it would be nice to see a team like Florida at the NIC. Ant, who would you like to see?
Gap, especially if they re-sign somebody.
Same pot.
I know. You just said who would we like to face? There we go. No, obviously Frölunda would be a big draw. A couple of nice sort of Western Central Europe teams would be good as well to help with the travel, I think.
Yeah, Tina.
To my shame, I haven't even looked. I feel absolutely terrible, but I don't know. I mean, rather than sort of, I don't know. Maybe some teams maybe some teams we could get a win against. I don't know. I'm not going to attempt to just pull something out of the hat. I am perfectly happy with however the draw goes. I think we're just aiming for those 2 wins. If we get any more than that, then fantastic. I just want us to do better than last time. I think I'm probably the opposite end from Andy, because if we're facing a really good team, I think it can be a little bit demoralising just watching us getting humped like 14-0 or something. It's I'd like to see some competitive games against people we can compete against, not necessarily win against, although a win would be nice, but just games against teams that we can put a show on for, basically.
To be fair, mine's not for the standard of hockey. Mine's for the fact that if I'm not going to get to ever see Henrik Lundqvist play in England,
you want to see his brother.
His twin's pretty worthwhile.
Fair enough. As I said, the draw for the CHL groups will be taking place on the 17th of May, and I believe it will be shown live on Premier Sports as well.
DEL team would be nice.
Yeah. I was thinking sort of Wolfsburg. I think Red Bull Munich are in there as well, so that'd be a good.
Is that so that we can put them out of business again?
Well, we do have a history.
Oh, no. So that's why we played Sheffield 14 times last season. Anyway, moving swiftly on. It's
been a while, actually, hasn't it?
Just wanted to say it's a big thank you to everyone who took part in the Cats Whiskers Panthers fan survey that was online last week. Big thank you also to Paul Baum, who put all that together and is now sort of compiling all the results. We had 650 unique responses, which is quite incredible because it represents around 13% of the average fan base. So that is an amazing sample of the Panthers fan base, and the results will be coming before the end of the month. So Paul will be crunching that together, and we will get something out on the Cats Whiskers website as soon as we can. But just very quickly, guys, 650 responses. I don't think any of us were really expecting that, were we?
It's fantastic. Are we assuming the vast majority of them are from Panthers fans as well, then, or is that taking out
that's 650
Northern Irish contingent and?
It's basically that's 650 responses with all the joke ones and the duplicates taken out. So 650.
Okay. I mean that is fantastic, and I'm looking forward to seeing the results of it when Paul sends it out.
Andy, Tina.
Yeah, definitely. I think ultimately. I mean, I can't speak for him, but I would imagine when Paul set about doing this, the target was to get a decent amount of responses. But I certainly don't think in anyone's wildest dreams, 650 was going to be the figure. I did think we might get a couple of hundred. But certainly not what we did get. I mean, that's a fantastic core and a fantastic representation of the fan base.
Yeah. Tina?
I'm looking forward to him sending us internally the funny responses and the daft ones, because there's some funny buggers out there.
Fair enough. Okay, we are going to leave Panthers there for the moment, and obviously, unless you've been living under a rock, you will know that Team GB won gold in Division 1B of the World Championships, which took place in Belfast last week. The results were 4-2 win against Croatia, a 5-1 win against Estonia, 5-2 win against Lithuania, a 14-0 win against the Netherlands, and a 4-0 win over Japan on Saturday night to confirm the gold medal and promotion to Division 1A. I mean, I believe all of us watched some portion of the championships on Premier Sports, and I must admit, for me, I was surprised. Well, not surprised, but it was such a good team performance throughout all 5 games, and Great Britain were just, I thought, superb throughout.
I would have to agree for what I actually saw. I mean, I'm afraid I'm a bit of a pauper, and Premier Sports is paying extra for Premier Sports is just not in my budget right now. But I did watch what I could, watched all the highlights, and yeah, it did seem like there was a plan. They stuck to it. I don't think GB ever seemed particularly flustered or out of their depth. So, you know, how can I put this? The comfort levels, I suppose, that they sort of displayed in the games leading up to the gold medal match. You know, I think it put a lot of people at ease. I don't think there were many people who were particularly, you know, everybody was excited for that gold medal game. I don't think there were too many people who were, you know, sort of bricking it, really, for want of a better phrase. But yeah, it was from what I saw, it was good. It was good to watch. It was good to watch a nice fluid team doing really well, and you know, the step up is going to be an opportunity for everybody to test themselves. I think, you know, we've stepped up. Now it's time to see if we can stay up.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Andy, you watched a fair few of the games. Who were the players who stood out for you?
Well, I think to be fair, Ben Bounds need to shout. I do also think that Murphy as well. I felt he played a really good part in splitting the games and still getting wins. So I think the 2 netminders particularly. Obviously, I think we have to mention Evan Mosey because, you know, he won. Did he win the MVP?
He won the GB Supporters Club Player of the Tournament.
Yeah, you know, and he was extremely good. But ultimately, as with most GB games, I still find it difficult to ever look past Dowd and O'Connor. They are, in my opinion, 2 of, if not the best 2 Brits that we have in the league and in Team GB. And I just think that particularly in these type of games for GB, you know, they really sort of prove their worth and show just how good they are. So for me, obviously special mention to Mosey because obviously I'm slightly biased, and I thought both netminders were very good, but I think ultimately Dowd and O'Connor would get my vote for you know, who really sort of stood out.
Hello. Yeah, not really a lot more to add, to be honest. It was I didn't get to see any of the games from start to finish. I sort of kept forgetting about them a couple of times and then sort of joining in after the end of the first period, that sort of thing. But it's a really good achievement, and it's finally to get that monkey off her back as well. I mean, we've been really close the last 2 or 3 years. Aim and I jokingly commented that we were going to be 2-1 up with 3 minutes to go and lose 3-2 against Japan. So it's really, really good that we've got over it, and yeah, well, let's roll on next year and let's see what next year brings.
I think for me as well, I thought Lakovic was excellent in the games that I saw. I thought Paul Swindlehurst played very well in defence, but I think it was an all-round team performance. The team just played very well, and there seemed to be an excellent spirit there. However, earlier today, I did get the chance to chat with one of the gold medalists. I think you may recognise him. As everyone knows, Great Britain won the World Championship Division 1 Group B, and I'm delighted to say that we've got one of the participants from the Great Britain team and an old favourite of the Cat's Whiskers podcast. It's a big welcome to Evan Mosey.
How's it going, everybody? Glad to be here.
Thanks for joining us, Evan, and we're going to start by talking about the World Championships in Belfast. And I suppose I want to start by saying, how was the whole experience of having a World Championships on home ice?
It was an absolute blast being able to be comfortable where you're playing in Belfast. You know, played there a lot with Nottingham and you know, pretty much same group of guys as I played with last year. So it was a really nice experience being able to go back there and be pretty comfortable playing in the venue and having your home fans supporting you the entire time.
It looked like it was a very well organised championship, and I saw a lot of praise for the volunteers and everyone involved, and it just seemed to work like clockwork. Yeah,
everybody that pretty much volunteered for the tournament had a specific job, and they pretty much executed to perfection. And having them being around and volunteering their time to be able to put together a world-class tournament like that and have it run so smoothly is I think a lot of people don't understand how hard it is to have that many moving pieces come together and work pretty flawlessly. So for the volunteers, you know, they did an unbelievable job, especially representing Belfast and the tournament as well. So it was great to see that come and happen.
And onto the tournament itself, and a quite outstanding set of results for Great Britain. 5 wins out of 5, just 5 goals conceded, 2 shutouts. And one of the things that I noticed from a lot of the interviews that was done with the players over the week was how good the team spirit was, and that really helped towards you earning the gold medal. Was that a big factor in it?
Yeah, I think that was a huge factor. You know, all the guys on the team are pretty much playing against each other the whole season, so there's a big rivalry over the season, and then for the guys to come together for the 2 weeks, I think 3 weeks that they might be able to be training, and then the tournament. So for those guys to come together, and you know, a lot of them are all friends. They've grown up playing against each other forever. So for them to you know, put like rivalries aside and stuff like that, and to be able to come together as a team and to see how good, you know, we played that tournament, to be able to go 5 straight wins and I don't want to say dominant fashion, but pretty good fashion as a team. You know, it's great to see that, and especially for years to come with some new guys coming in. Like Stewie came in and Dougie came in, and those guys, you know, were pretty much welcomed with open arms. Same with, you know, Brooksy coming in is kind of being a duel. Some guys are a little standoffish, and it was great to see the team just embrace everybody and how good they came together and how good we came together as a team and how good we played. It was one of those things where you don't get that too often. So it was nice to see everybody, you know, buy in and want to do something special and win a gold medal, and we were lucky enough to do that.
How pleased were you with your own personal contribution? Because you was the joint top point scorer for Team GB. You 3 goals, 5 assists, and you received the Great Britain Supporters Club Player of the tournament, and that must have made you very proud.
Yeah, it was a pretty proud moment for me to be able to do that. I don't really worry too much about personal points and stuff like that. I think, you know, if the team does well, you know, as an individual, you'll be able to put up points and stuff like that. And you could see that with a lot of the guys on the team. They also did good. I think I was tied with Shields and Dowd, and there was a lot of guys from our team that were up there on the points list. So I think, you know, if the team does well, your individual goals and stuff will be met. I'm a big believer in that, but it was nice to get recognition from the supporters to name me MVP. It was something I'll never forget.
How much of a boost do you think this will be to UK hockey, winning the gold medal, getting promotion, in your opinion?
It's huge, you know, to be able to get promoted and you know, step up the competition a lot for us, and you know, we do the exhibition games versus Poland, and those are pretty close games. Usually they split with Poland, so I think, you know, it's huge for Great Britain and to be able to promote hockey more and get better competition and challenge ourselves and see if, you know, we can actually stay in that group. And maybe I think, you know, the way we played this last week, I think we'd surprise a lot of teams in that division, not really knowing too much about us. But I think it's huge for hockey in Great Britain.
And moving on to yourself, and of course you spent most of last season in the American Hockey League with the Rockford Ice Hogs. You also spent some time with Indy Fuel in the ECHL. So how was last season for you?
For me personally, I'd have to say it was a big learning curve for me. Going back over to the U.S. and playing, people, you know, it's just a game at the end of the day, but people don't really understand that it's a completely different style of hockey over there. They play on smaller ice, and you know, things happen a lot faster on that small ice. You know, you don't have a lot of time and space and stuff like that. And the guys that you're playing against are, you know, extremely skilled, and they want to make it to the NHL. So everybody's, you know, every game is pretty much a huge game, and everybody's trying 110%. But for me, it was a great learning experience, and I was lucky enough and fortunate enough to get good opportunities up in Rockford, where I pretty much stayed the majority of the season in Rockford, and didn't really play too much in Indy and the East Coast. So it was nice to have the opportunity to show what I had, and you know, they believed in me, and they liked the way I played. So that's pretty much why I had the opportunity to stay mostly up in Rockford.
And what happens next? So what is next for you? Is there any plans for next season or anything concrete for next season yet?
To be honest, no, nothing really set in stone for next year. You know, I want to go back to the U.S. and see what happens. I didn't really have my exit meeting with Rockford because as soon as the season ended, I left right away. So, you know, talk to them and see what they have planned, and you know, it all stems in the NHL and what Chicago's doing with Rockford. So, you know, just, you know, go home and kind of relax a little bit and see what happens and kind of get a little proactive. And if nothing's going to happen back in the U.S., see if there's anything in Europe. That's kind of my plan right now, but we'll see what happens when I get home.
And the chances of making the NHL, I suppose that they're still there. It still must be a burning ambition of yours.
Yeah, I think every hockey player, you know, has grown up as a kid has that ambition, and it's one of those dreams you never really quite want to give up. But if the opportunity is there for me next year to play in the AHL, whether that be Rockford or somewhere else, I don't really know right now. But you know, if I'm playing in the AHL, it's always going to be a dream to make it to the NHL. I think that's every hockey player's dream growing up.
Evan, I want to say thank you very much for joining us, and thanks for taking the time to talk to us. Congratulations on the gold medal, and all the very best of luck for next season.
No problem. Thank you. I appreciate you having me and giving my opinion on some stuff.
Many, many thanks to Evan for taking the time to talk to me earlier today. Great to hear from him, and great to hear that he is doing so well and enjoying life back in North America. And from that, guys, I really don't think we are going to see him back here, sadly, for the foreseeable future, for certain.
Well, we had him on the way up, so, you know, it's reasonable to assume we'll see him on the way down, as it were. Can I, you know, before we sort of move on, can I just mention just something about the GB team in general?
Yeah.
Is that okay? You know how I like to go off topic every now and then. It's just the whole sort of Team GB buzz that is around at the moment. One of the reasons I'm so excited about the two signings that we've made, and you know the sort of inroads that some teams are making with Brits. You know, I know a lot of times it has been said that the Elite League is not a development league, and you know, as we're going to discuss a bit later on, it becomes even more important now with the demise, the certain demise of the EIHL, that. You know, we kind of have a responsibility towards, you know, developing the British players. It doesn't have to be a development league, but I think, you know, we've got to do something, because, I mean, for me personally, yes, fine, you know, it's brilliant. GB have won a gold medal. They've been promoted to the next league. I don't feel it as much as I want to. I want to be passionately involved. You know, in supporting the GB team, and I'm not. you know, I didn't go to Belfast because I'm having my kitchen done, and I want to feel the other way around. I want to put my kitchen on hold because I'm going to, you know, because I want to go and watch GB, and I'm just not feeling that. You know, there's you know, any amounts of passion for the England rugby team, the England football team, even though they're never going to get past the quarterfinals ever again in my lifetime. But you know, I want that passion for the GB teams, and the only way that passion is going to grow within the UK fan base is if they do well. You know, it's success just sort of breeds that kind of, you know, that kind of fire. So, you know, I really want so much more for the Brits that play in our country. I want so much more for our league, and I want so much more for our national team. So, you know, that's sort of the reason why at the beginning of the show is part of it. You know, why I'm getting so excited with the Brits that we have signed. And you know, I was really excited about the under 23s rule that came in. So yeah, that's just my little piece on you know, the whole sort of GB setup in this country.
Fair enough. But I sort of agree with you, but I mean, I was going, and then obviously the opportunity to go to Korea came up, and I couldn't go in the end. But I was booked to go to Belfast, and sadly I wasn't able to make it over. But yeah, I can sort of see where you're coming from there, Tina, and I think it needs investment and alignment from all parties to enter, and I think that's what Richard Griefson, the chairman of Ice Hockey UK, is trying to get everybody on the same page, but it's going to take time. It's
going to be it's what has happened now with the EIHL. It's just made his job a whole lot harder, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Guy, Andy, anything to add to what Tina's said?
No, not for me.
Not really. I think we could have probably done a bit better with the whole advertising side of things, I think, for the tournament, and maybe slightly cheaper on the ticket prices. But let's forget about that. The main aim was to get to promotion. We got promotion. Roll on next year. It's a buzz.
Okay, if you want to get in touch with us to talk about anything we're talking about on tonight's show, you can do via Twitter at CatsWhiskersTV. We would love to hear from you if you are listening to us live. Okay, we are now going to talk about the Elite League Conference realignment. This was big news last week. After an Elite League board meeting last Thursday, it was announced that with 2 new teams joining, we would move from 2 conference system to 3 conferences of 4 teams. A Scottish conference of Braehead Clan, Edinburgh Capitals, Dundee Stars and Fife Flyers. An arena conference of Cardiff Devils, Belfast Giants, Nottingham Panthers and the Sheffield Steelers. And then, I don't want to sound disparaging, but I suppose it's the rest conference, which is Milton Keynes Lightning, Guildford Flames, the 2 new teams, the Coventry Blaze and the Manchester Storm. This obviously created a massive amount of discussion on social media when it was revealed. There was quite a few for it, quite a lot against it, but a statement from Todd Kelman on Friday seemed to calm everyone down a little bit. Before we talk about that statement, I'm just going to ask, so what do you think of the new conferences? And we'll start with you.
Probably like the vast majority of people, when they first announced, I wasn't that surprised. However, I wasn't that happy. I think being paired up with Sheffield and Belfast and Cardiff, thought, my God, you know, we're in for a really, really hard season. There's the joys, obviously, with the Challenge Cup coming in there as well. We've got, you know, straight away we're starting with a minimum 10 games against Sheffield. I mean, we've already spoken on countless occasions of how diluted that rivalry is now. I know it makes sense money-wise, but you know, for the fan-wise, the vast majority of us people I speak to, they're bored. They're bored of seeing the same team every 10 days or something. We played them on average last season. I mean, that is not good enough.
22% of our domestic games are against Sheffield.
I mean, that's just nuts, isn't it? Really, but like you said, Mr. Kelman's press release. I mean, that man could probably sell ice to an Eskimo. I'd gone from sort of really debating whether to renew my season ticket or not. I was genuinely upset about the whole thing. I thought we'd bent over backwards to accommodate a couple of teams, at the disparagement of the rest of them. But you have time to digest, you have time to think about it, and obviously, the way it works is we actually have less inner conference games and more outer conference games, so that sort of balances the league up a bit more. The only issue I've got with it is the fact that we've got Sheffield in both our cup and conference, which means we see him like all the time again. Now I'll give it next season. Let's see what happens. We could inherit another between now and then. I mean, it's happened before with Dundee joiners. We could inherit a new team before the season starts, and that throws everything out again. So let's see how it goes. Let's give it a go. Yeah, not much more to say, really.
Andy?
I'm not overly struck on the conferences, but I said on the day that it was announced, as much as I don't like them, if it means that we get to have 12 teams in the league next year, I'm all for it. At the end of the day, sustainability has to be key for this league if it's going to succeed. We've seen in my relatively short time coming, I was there when the ISL finished. I was there when we'd got, I think, 5 teams in the league, and that was it. And then obviously something had to be done, and they created the Elite League. So I think sustainability is the key, and ultimately I don't think, even with 2 new teams joining, I don't think we're in a position to start losing teams and still being all right, because obviously the big thing with Milton Keynes and Guildford joining the league was the fact that it was expanding. It's the fact there were going to be new teams. It was going to be a new excitement, rather than what we've seen in the past when teams like Phoenix, Bison, Vipers, Stingrays obviously disappear and just get sort of replaced by somebody else, or if at all. So I think ultimately at the moment, I'm all for it if it provides sustainability for the teams that are sort of teetering on the edge, shall we say. And I just think that hopefully in the long run, hopefully things we'll have a better outlook, and things will be slightly easier, and perhaps we could look at either realigning the conferences or changing the way the conferences are, or even just going into a sort of a straight league, a sort of 2 at home, 2 away, or 3 at home, 3 away, depending on how many teams are in there. Because I think ultimately that would be everyone's ideal, but obviously with the way it is over here, and obviously the way the areas and where everybody is situated, you kind of have to just sort of suck it up, really.
Okay, Tina?
I don't like it, but I understand it. I can see where they're coming from. And having thrashed together some quick figures, I can see how for some teams the difference that playing the other 3 Scottish teams 1 game less, I can see the difference that makes. It's quite startling for some teams how much they rely on those inter-conference games. But it does, like has already been said, it sort of leads to, it kind of, it's no, I don't think it's any detriment to any of the organisations, how much they are playing each other, but I think it does lose something for us fans. The thing I'm least happy about, and the thing I understand why, but I think is absolutely bonkers, is the fact that we are in the same Challenge Cup group as Sheffield. So once again, we're going to be playing Sheffield 4 times at home, 4 times away in the league. Within our conference, we're going to be playing them at home and away in the Challenge Cup. We could conceivably play them, if we both go through from our Challenge Cup group, we could conceivably play them in a later stage, even in the quarterfinals or the semi-finals or even the final itself. And then you've got playoffs, where lo and behold, we met them again last season. It's going to be. I think it's going to be a bit of a bugbear for some of us fans this season. But as I say, I don't like it, but I kind of understand it.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much where I am. I don't like it. I think that the conferences are just totally unbalanced, because you've got an arena conference, you've got the Scottish conference, and then you've got the other conference, and I just think that the conferences are completely unbalanced, and that doesn't lend itself to a fair league. But then again, life ain't fair. Sorry, can I just jump in with something that I've not heard many people talk about? We've been, if you like, bent over a barrel by 3 Scottish teams who wanted their inter-conference rivalry games intact. Poor old Manchester have been booted out of that Scottish conference. They still have to travel south for every game. They're inter-conference rivals. Their closest ones are Coventry, and Altrincham to Coventry. It's not. I mean, from here, it's just over an hour, depending on how heavy your lead foot is, but. Right, it's a bomb down the M6. It's easy, as long as the M6 is not clogged up.
No. Nothing about the M6 is easy. Anybody who has to travel the M6 will tell you that nothing about the M6 is easy. But yeah, I think Manchester have had a bit of a. I think they've had a bit of a bum deal really out of all of this, and they seem to be the ones complaining the least, which it kind of puts us to shame a little bit. We're this big arena team. We've got the finances and the infrastructure and everything to kind of handle pretty much anything that might get thrown at us. And poor old Manchester, they've kind of got a bum deal out of it, and their travelling has probably increased quite a lot. Altrincham to Guildford. I imagine that's a fair old stretch, and I don't think it makes any sense to do it by plane either. I think it's probably going to be a coach job. So I hate
4.5 hours according to Google Maps. I've just been looking at it.
Yeah, it's still a fair it's still a fair journey, I think. So maybe there's a certain amount of put up and shut up. Let's just get on with it and see. Like Ant says, see how we go.
What did you make of Todd? Because Todd Kelman came out on Friday and he sort of explained everything in the way that he does, calmly, rationally, put the reasons why. But I think the killer was his sort of final paragraph, was now my challenge to some other teams that think that the teams we share a conference with somehow have the right to bigger crowds and more income on ticket sales and sponsorship. Work harder every day to sell tickets and sponsorship and group packages and corporate hospitality. The conference system is a solution to keep us all in business, but it's only half the solution. The other part is the hard bit. Get up and sell every day. Open early, stay late, go to every networking event you can. Hire more staff and take the chance on them bringing in more than they cost. We don't sell out because we have a new arena or a great team. We have a great team because we sell out. And my MVPs are on the phone right now selling tickets and chasing sponsorship and out at meetings. And it's April. And I thought that was absolutely brilliant. It's like, right, it was almost saying, we've done what you wanted, now do your bit. And I just thought, nice one, Todd.
I couldn't agree more, because I'm really sorry to pick on them, because I've been there a fair few times and what have you. But the Edinburgh Capitals, they have they have they've got potential to sell much more than they do. They've got potential to put more bums on seats. I mean, the first time I went up for a Scottish triple header, I went up there, and I have a cousin who lives in Edinburgh, and I went and met him for a drink, and I'd not really told him why I was there. I said, I'm going to be in Edinburgh, do you want to meet up for a drink one day? And we'd arranged to do that. We sat down. So he said, what are you doing here then? I said, we're going to see the Capitals. And he just looked at me with a blank face. Now, he's lived in Edinburgh for over 20 years. He just looked at me with a blank face and said, you going to see what? I said, I'm going to see the ice hockey, the Capitals. He went, oh, what, at Murrayfield? Oh, I didn't know there was a team there. He got absolutely no idea. And that's just an example. Any time that I've been walking around Edinburgh in my hockey jersey, I walk into a bar and people are looking at my hockey jersey going, what are you doing here? and I have to tell them. Nobody knows. That's just an example. I mean, I've never walked around Dundee city centre. I've never sort of left the compound that contains the ice rink. But they don't get very good attendances either. Fife have got the benefit of having had a good attendance that they've brought with them. So they're not in quite as much bums on seats trouble as Dundee and Edinburgh are. So yeah, Todd Kelman's absolutely right. Fair enough. I mean, he's explained everything, which he's done a stellar job. Calming the flames and kind of trying to stop the chaos. But he's absolutely right. There are teams in this league that they've got to do more, because otherwise they're going, no matter what we do, what the rest of the league does for them, they're going to go under. If they can't sustain themselves, there's probably nothing we can do to sustain them.
Andy, anything to add?
No, not really. I've got a story about Edinburgh, but other than that, nothing really of any note.
Okay.
You're not going to tell us a story?
Well, it was just, to sort of just to emphasise a little bit of what Tina said was one of the times we went up for a double header. We stayed in the Hampton Hotel, which I believe is next door to the Murrayfield Murrayfield Inn. So
yes,
it's like across the road from the rink. And we played on the Saturday, and we went back to the bar. And in there was a bloke in a cap. He'd got an Edinburgh Capitals cap on, or a jacket. He'd got some sort of Edinburgh Capitals merchandise on, and obviously he saw that we'd come back in from a game, so we were obviously all kitted out with Nottingham stuff, and he asked what the score was, and obviously we told him what the score was, and my dad just said to him, he says, were you not there? And he says, oh no, Sunday night's hockey night, I don't go on a Saturday. And I just, that's always stuck with me. But, they are fighting with that. He was literally, 300 yards from 300 metres from the rink. But he wouldn't go because it's not the right day. And that's always, it's always stuck with me, that has. And there's so much more that every team, ourselves included, there's so much more that we can do to publish our sport and to get more people through the doors. But seemingly everyone just sort of seems content to muddle on through as best as they have done so far. And I just think that, I didn't listen to the Todd Kelman thing, but obviously from that paragraph that you've said, Jono, I think he's absolutely right. It is time that teams took onus themselves, and I appreciate that some teams obviously do better than others, and some teams will be happy with what they've got now. But I think ultimately there is a responsibility for the clubs, for the owners, for the staff, the off-ice staff, to do something about it themselves. And that goes for all 12 clubs. It's not just singling out one or two teams. It's for all 12 clubs. Everyone needs to muck in. Everyone needs to pull their weight, and everyone needs to do something to get this league as strong as it possibly can be, because it's got the potential.
Yeah, I mean, I can remember one of the first times. In fact, yeah, it was the first time I went to Edinburgh. We got dropped off our hotel. I can't remember. I think it was the Premier Inn East. And on the Saturday, it was a double header. On the Saturday, we asked behind the counter and everything, right, what's the easiest way to get to the rink from here? And they actually gave us directions to the open air ice rink in the city centre. It was a Christmas time thing, so it's just like, no, we mean, you know, the one that's next to the rugby ground. So there's people that are actually in Edinburgh don't even know there's an ice rink next to the rugby ground. Never mind that there's a team in the city. But I have seen it improving very slowly over the last couple of times I've been up. I mean, just recently when we went up for the treble, you saw countless number of black cabs going around with Edinburgh Capitals logo all over it. So they are doing some stuff, but as always, you can always do more. And the more advertising, it invariably leads to more people coming through the door.
Mm. Of course, the realignment does mean that Panthers get an extra game on the season ticket, making it a 28-game season ticket, which for mine works out at, I think, something like £12.86 a game, which I think is cracking value for money, I've got to be honest. And another thing I've got to say about the season ticket is a bit of praise for the Panthers and the arena for making it so easy to renew. It took me 90 seconds to renew my season ticket online when I got back from Korea, and when I see the reams of forms that my other half had to fill out to go to that horrible place up north for another season, just made me glad that I just had to do a few clicks, because of course the internet obviously hasn't reached Sheffield yet. But
yeah, but to be fair, I turned up I did say exactly the same thing last season. Turned up at the arena with my season ticket for last season, said I'd like to renew, please. They took my card, scanned the details in, all the address, confirmed all the details were the same, and then paid. I was in and out of the arena within less than a minute. You know, it's apart from the queuing side of things, you know, it was so easy. And you're right. I mean, fair play to them for that, and fair play as well for giving us that extra game. They could have quite easily gone with the original amount and told us to buy the Sheffield Christmas game, for instance. I'd just be interested to see, just on a slightly different note, I really, really hope we don't double up the games in the Challenge Cup this year. With having Manchester and Braid in the league, we don't get to see an awful lot of them. So it would be nice to have an extra game against them next season.
Double up the game against Sheffield if you can double one up.
Yeah, I'd be fine with that, to be fair.
Wouldn't bother me in the slightest. Never going to happen. Never going to happen, because it's a huge payday they'll miss out on. But, yeah. There we go. Anyway, a few tweets that we received today from fans about this system. Trevor Walker, he says, crazy playing the same teams 10 times in one season. What is wrong with one or two groups? Mark Twait, former Panther, he says, purely to save on travel, to make big arenas more money and add another conference trophy for a small club to win to keep fans happy. One league, one governing body, and a correct and proper playoff series is what's required. Take the blinkers off. EIHL. Kenwin Jones, he says, guess this is the best format. Tough arena group. Yeah, I certainly agree with that. And Panthers Sam, he says, rather than have four home and away games with... I would rather have 4 home and away games with Blaze over Steelers any day. I think that's the biggest beef that most people have got with this, certainly from what I've seen from Nottingham, is that it's once again going to be so many games against the Steelers.
Definitely. You know, I think, I can't remember the exact figures, but Panthers from the Vault tweeted something about how many times we played them in the past, like 3 seasons or something.
It was 56 times or something ridiculous, I think it was.
Yeah, and that can't be good for anyone. It can't. It's got to be counterproductive for everybody involved.
But it's not, though, is it? Because the arena's still selling out virtually every Sheffield game. I mean, I agree. I mean, I find it absolutely tedious. But
do you not think, though, that eventually it will come a time when people will stop going?
Honestly, no, I don't think it will, because I think a lot of your casual fans just see Sheffield and they think, oh, it's Sheffield, we'll go to that one. And I think they're just an easy sell. I don't think there'll come a time.
I don't know. I think there might be a saturation point at some point. I don't think it'll. It's obviously not coming just yet, but I think there will be a time in the next couple of seasons where a Sheffield League game doesn't sell out.
Mm. Well, I might hold you to that.
I'm not betting anything. I'm not.
Wow.
It's a statement of my opinion. You get to laugh at me if I'm wrong. How's that?
Chicken. Right, we'll leave that there, I think, and we will move on to our final item, which is slightly different for the podcast. We have talked about the EPL before, but I decided to get an expert in this time to talk about it. So I invited Anthony Russell from Banners on the Wall podcast for a chat about the EPL disbanding and the teams being asked to join the National Ice Hockey League. It's quite a long interview, but so settle back and have a listen, but very, very interesting, and explains a lot about what is going off on the second tier at the moment. As many listeners may well know, the EPL has been disbanded, with the EIHL chairman Ken Taggart telling teams that remain from the EPL to apply to the NIHL. I'm delighted to say joining us on the podcast is Anthony Russell from the Banners on the Wall podcast. Anthony is a Basingstoke fan. And Anthony, first of all, welcome to the Cat's Whiskers.
Thank you, Johnny. It's only taken us about, nearly 2 years since you were on my show.
Well, yes, yeah, so, I don't get round to these things very quickly, but you're here now, and that's the main thing. I suppose the first thing to say is, in a nutshell, just describe what has happened.
The can is open, the worms are everywhere. Essentially what happened was a couple of months ago now, when it became clear that Guildford would be leaving the English Premier League as well. We'd already had Milton Keynes last summer say that they were moving to the Elite League. Manchester Phoenix unfortunately folded after the slow death that they died, and then Guildford turned around and said that they were going to be leaving. They'd made an application to join the Elite League as well. The reasons for that were unclear. Some people felt that was maybe a few years too late, considering how Guildford generally have gone about things. My personal opinion is that they heard the plans that came out of Ice Hockey UK for Tier 2, said we're not having any of that, governor, and decided to go on their merry way. So we were initially left with 7, and the 7 teams that were left agreed to drop the word English, and they were going to become the Premier Ice Hockey League, which many people felt was an attempt to just kind of entice teams from elsewhere, Solway, to join the league, or anybody from anywhere, to just try and make the league more appealing prospect for other teams, possibly outside of England, to join. There was rumours of Solway, there were rumours of Cardiff, of Chelmsford, of Invicta stepping up and joining what was going to become a 3-import league, down from 5 which we had this year. No teams from the NIHL structure wanted to come up. From a Banners on the Wall perspective, I was made aware of one team that weren't going to join, and there were rumours of others. And essentially, we got to this point where, technically, the 7 teams still exist. There is technically still a Premier Ice Hockey League under the governance of the English Ice Hockey Association, so it's not been disbanded per se. However, with only 7 teams spread over with a few teams quite close to each other and then a few teams further away, the advice from Ken Taggart, the chairman of the English Ice Hockey Association, was that he felt that such a league would not be viable with just 7 teams. No teams were willing to step up to fill in the gap, and his advice was that the teams apply to join the National Ice Hockey League, so what we've all known as the third tier of the structure in Britain. Telford and Sheffield were advised to join the northern section, and the others were advised to join the southern section. And here we are. For the most part, all the teams bar Telford have made a public announcement that they are applying to join the relevant sections. Telford have not said anything yet, as far as they've sort of put out a very sort of airy-fairy statement that they're keeping their options open. I've not heard either way. I'm aware all the other teams have publicly stated we have applied to join as per the advice we've been given, and from a purely, I don't know off the top of my head when the northern section meeting is, but the southern section meeting is this coming Sunday, where they will hear the variety of applications that have come in for that.
What do you feel has led to this? Do you think it's a combination of lots of factors, like you mentioned, Manchester Phoenix going under, you've got Guildford and Milton Keynes joining the Elite League? Do you think it's a combination of those things, or do you think there's one particular thing that has led to it?
No, it's definitely a combination. The thing is that a lot of people, I've seen people sort of say, "Oh, this day's always been coming," or British hockey always goes in cycles, and I think certainly the EPL has taken the bigger hit over the last couple of years in terms of some of the bits and pieces that have happened to it. As we've said, Manchester, unfortunately died their slow death, and how much emphasis you put upon it, but the issues with Telford last season, over the last couple of years, since they were taken over by Wayne Scholes and Red Hockey, how much you think that is to blame, or how much impact you think that's had, I'd say that's a decision for the individual to make. I think to say it's had no impact as to how we've got to this point is insane. It's definitely had an impact. Telford's operating company, we're going into liquidation back in November with debts of over £500,000 for a second-tier semi-professional British ice hockey team, which is mad. There's no other way to put that. But I think as well. I think they said they turned around and were going to make the EIHL, and they're going to drop from 5 imports to 3. I think there's an argument as well, and it won't be a popular one with anybody who's a particular fan of the NIHL, but the teams that were left from the old EPL made a step towards the Premier League, towards the National League sides, to say, come and join us, because there are teams in the NIHL more than capable of making that step, and they've all gone no. And the reasons why they've said no could be entirely legitimate. They could be a case of wanting to be the big fish in the small pond. I'm aware again of at least one side that said this is nothing to do with the Tier 2 structure that Richard Grewson and Ice Hockey UK are putting forward, therefore we're not joining the plan. We're not going to step up into the Premier League. But unfortunately it's the age old British hockey issue that it feels like sometimes of the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing, and instead of finding a way to shake hands, they've just punched each other, and we've ended up where they are. And unfortunately, it's meant that a couple of organisations that are run relatively well and were entirely sustainable at EPL level, but were never in a position really to step up into the Elite League, and now finding themselves having to join a 2-import National League through no fault really of their own. In fact, sort of out of the 7 that are left, all 7, Telford with their new ownership and everything like that. I mean, Bracknell were the ones that were always on slightly dodgier ground, having really fought and struggled and crowdfunded to get into the season last year. But 6 of those 7 that are left are financially, secure, stable. They were all in a position where they were able to go ahead this year, whether we would have had 3 imports or 5, and they've kind of been allowed in some ways to fall through the cracks. And the English Ice Hockey Association needs to take a measure of blame for that, because the people who do the governance and run the NIHL have done a fantastic job. Both North and South sections, yes, there's issues there, but they've generally managed to keep everything on an even keel. the English Premier League was kind of left to its own devices, and there's not been any actual governance of the league, bar the occasional popping the head over the parapet. And actually, where they've left the owners to kind of go off and do their own thing for too long, here we are.
Ken Taggart said that the team should apply to the NIHL. Some NIHL teams weren't too happy about that. Oxford City Stars released a public statement saying that there was going to be a gulf. You've got all these teams coming down with much bigger crowds, much bigger fan bases, more money coming in, and therefore it could lead to a two-tier system within that one tier. I mean, how do you feel about that? Do you sort of have some sympathy with what the likes of Oxford are saying?
Yeah, entirely. James Schall, who's one of the directors of Oxford, has been very, very vocal about it, and I don't blame him at all. I think the thing as well that maybe some NIHL fans and owners and bits and pieces like maybe don't understand, or maybe don't sort of appreciate, is that in an ideal world we wouldn't be doing this. It's not a case of that we've magically tripped over and fallen and, oh look, we're in the NIHL now, and Basingstoke and Swindon and Peterborough are now in a league with the MK Thunder and Solent and Gosport and things like that. And in an ideal world, we would find a place for these teams that are, under the sort of current structures, would essentially come in and blow the league apart. And that doesn't serve anybody particularly well. There's going to be some adaptations required on all sides. But I suppose again, the thing needs to go out to the to the NIHL clubs that are there as well, that have a justified issue. Is that we're not we're coming because we're organisations that want to play hockey. We want to continue playing hockey. We want to offer that product. NIHL, for people who watch NIHL 1 hockey, either north or south, and I have to confess to having never made it to a game in the north, but I've watched a fair bit of hockey in the south, and I've seen some really, really uneducated opinions come out about NIHL 1 hockey, and people saying that it's nothing but it's nothing but a glorified rec league. There are better rec teams. Firstly, that's rubbish. It's garbage. It's a garbage opinion, not based on fact. But the quality level has, as it generally has in club hockey across Britain, and I think you'd agree with this from some of the stuff you see in the Elite League as well, there's always a little steady increase, or at least there has been over the last sort of 5 years or so. Yeah. And NIHL 1 has not been any different in that sense. And do those teams coming down who have that little bit more professionalism in how they run themselves, in terms of being able to help generate more sponsorship, more eyes on the product, do they help make that better? Do they help with that bit of extra money? If Oxford suddenly say, yes, we're playing games where we're getting gates of maybe about 600 or 700, and I know Oxford have capacity issues with their rink that they're trying to look at, but if they were getting 500 maybe for a game against, I don't know, let's pick a team, maybe they get 400 people for a game against the Bracknell Hornets, and all of a sudden they're playing Swindon, and there's enough of sporting rivalry between Oxford and Swindon in football, and you suddenly translate that onto the hockey rink, and that 400 becomes 800, and that 800 people includes a local company director. I always enjoyed this with the football. That's another X amount of pounds in because somebody has picked up on that. And there's an argument that yes, that there is a possibility to end up in that spiral. But if you've got more professional organisations in terms of with more experience of running in that way in that league, it can force the ones that are there to get better, and then the overall thing can kind of improve with it. That's not to say that the organisations that are currently there don't run themselves professionally. Certainly the new ownership at Oxford, for example, have done fantastic work in making those guys a much more relevant organisation. And Streatham in particular, when you look at some of the stuff they've done in terms of how, over their name change over the last couple of years and how they've done bits and pieces, they're very professionally run as well. But if you give people better competition, not just on the ice, but off it, then hopefully we can all get better together and we can hopefully all learn from each other, because there are organisations in British hockey that could learn from some of the work that Oxford and Streatham have done, but there's also stuff that Oxford and Streatham can learn from Swindon, from Peterborough, from Basingstoke. There's stuff in the teams that Billingham and Whitley can teach to Telford and Sheffield and the Sheffield Steel Dogs, and vice versa. So we're in a situation that nobody wants to be in, but we've got a choice. We can either make the best of it, or we can put our knuckles up and try and fight each other. And I think most people listening, I think, would agree that we've had enough of fighting each other, and it's probably time now to actually knuckle down and to find some actual solutions out of this.
So your own team is the Basingstoke Bison, which many of our listeners will know from their time in the Elite League. They've been in the EPL for the past few years. You're now going to find yourselves more than likely in the NIHL. There's problems with the Basingstoke rink that have been publicised this year. So from your point of view, from your point of view, from a Bison point of view, how is it for you? How is it for the team?
The thing I've said quite a few times over the last year was that, one of the things that always amused me was that some people again would criticise the Bison style of play. They would say we were overly physical. Some people would call us goons, and I would always laugh that off and then I would point towards the league title that we won in 2016. And the thing I've said this year, and I've said it to the management. I've been very, very open about it. I've not sort of been sniping about it. I've put it on pieces I've written on the blog. I've done it on the podcast. I've done it on social media. The Basingstoke Bison this year have played really, really entertaining, really attractive hockey in spite of our facility rather than in conjunction with it. There's issues with subsidence to the point that many Panthers fans who visited Basingstoke during the Elite League era, that side where the away stand was, the subsidence was so bad, the whole side has been condemned. So we've had one side of the rink that we haven't been able to put fans in this year. The ice, the ice doesn't freeze quickly enough. There's always tons of surface water left at the beginning of periods after the Olympia has cut the ice. The place just needs a massive overhaul, and we're kind of at this sort of a bit of an impasse really, where we're not in a place where they've been with Milton Keynes and they've been with Gosport, because Leisure Park, which is the sort of the leisure facility on the outskirts of Basingstoke where the rink is, and we've got the bingo hall and there's an Odeon, and there's a bowling alley and the ice rink and the swimming pool and these sort of things.
And the lovely pub I seem to remember as well.
The Spruce Goose, yes. A lovely lovely pub it is as well. But there is a lot of talk about all of that being redone in about sort of 2020, 2021, which is great. But as you can appreciate, it's meant everybody's sort of putting everything off and holding on a little bit. And actually, we're probably getting to a point where some of the money that should have been, where maybe £10,000 could have been spent 5 years ago to bring things up to standard, we're now looking at spending £20,000 to keep this place going until we get something new. My personal theory is that we should just kick out to the Milestones Historical Museum that loses a ridiculous amount of money and just flood the floor and play hockey out of that. But I'm told that's not allowed, and it's ruining a cultural facility for the local people. But
final question.
Well,
yes. So. Who needs history? What's history ever done? We never learn from it anyway.
No.
Just one final question, and it's really, what do you think that the English Ice Hockey Association and Ice Hockey UK should really do about this whole situation?
It's the $1 million question, isn't it? I think actually probably what needs to happen is that we've kind of had this point for quite a long time where everybody has kind of been sat around the table and kind of been left to kind of work stuff out for themselves. And we've done it for quite a while, and it doesn't really work. So what do the governing bodies need to do? They actually need to govern. They need to come in and they need to sit down and they need to lead the way on this process. If the EIHL as an organisation is on board with this new Tier 2 plan of Richard Greaves and Ice Hockey UK, then come in and implement it. come in and actually facilitate the discussions, figure out, and it's not to say that the plan that Richard Grieveson's got is perfect at all, but if this is the framework that Ice Hockey UK is the governing body, it's the IIHF affiliated body. René Fasel has told us that has said many times that there's too much gumph and politics and stuff like that in British ice hockey. So IHUK, you want to do these bits and pieces, then come in and run it. EIHA, if you're going to help with the developmental side of bits and pieces, then come in and sort that out. We're and I stuck something out when the various bits and pieces hit the fan, that there's too many people sort of sitting being quiet when they need to be talking. The league management people, certainly for NIHL 1 South, who I've been in contact with, have been brilliant. They've been keeping particularly Richard Carpenter, the league manager, has with the vast array of phone calls and bits and pieces he's had off of people, still will make time to talk to me in my quote unquote media-ish position that I have within within sort of second and third tier British hockey, to keep me as updated as I'm allowed to be when I'm not allowed to be in the room, kind of thing. And with all due respect to Richard's brilliant. It shouldn't be Richard's job to be completely running the show. We've heard nothing from Ken Taggart. I think, but at this stage, I think actually his position is now untenable. I think he should resign. I will be saying this again on my show later this week, that I think the time has come for Ken to go, because I don't think, if he is the head of the organisation, the leadership has not been there. We really, really need the leadership, and there is still feeling like there is nothing there, apart from an email saying apply to the NIHL, and has pushed the problems down onto a league structure that's actually worked very, very well, and has only lost a team, and it will lose a second team because the rink on the Isle of Wight's shut, and it's lost a team it's going to lose a team in Blackburn because of issues between that team and the rink. It's not losing teams because they are financially not viable. Teams in the NIHL level are suddenly going to have this issue to an extent thrust upon them, and neither side of it wants it. Who's actually leading? This is the thing. Who's being vocal about it? And Seth Bennett asked the questions of Richard Grieveson in the period break of the Great Britain Japan game, and there was a lot of good intention in what Richard said, but not very much in the way of substance. And I think the time has actually come for those people who are at the top to pull their finger out and actually do something about it. You want to be the leaders of the sport, bloody well lead.
Okay, Anthony, well, I want to thank you very much for your time and coming on to the show this evening. Just very quickly, banners on the wall, where can people reach you and where can people find it?
I'll try to not immediately snap into my podcast voice for this. Bannersonthewall.wordpress.com is the website. That's where the writing goes. That's mainly Basingstoke Bison focused. The podcast is the BOTW podcast. That's at bannersonthewall.wordpress.com/podcast. We're on iTunes. There's an RSS feed. We're on Spreaker.
Yay, Spreaker.
Yes, which I believe I told you about. So I believe I mentioned Spreaker to you, which is why the Cat's Whiskers is on.
It's on Spreaker, yes. So it's all down to you.
Yay! We've got the links to that on bannersonthewall.wordpress.com/podcast. Without sounding too spoilery, we've got some exciting stuff actually coming up on the podcast, which I'm really, really excited about. We're on Twitter at bannersotw, facebook.com/bannersonthewall. Always interested to hear people. If you haven't read it already, go read Doug Clarkson's Open Letter to British Hockey. It's the most read thing in the history of the website. It's definitely interesting. We've had some really, really good opinions thrown around on that. If you've missed it, it's a really great hole you've been living in.
Okay. Well, Anthony, thanks very much for coming on, and we'll hopefully won't leave it 2 years until next time.
No worries, John. I'll see you in 2019.
Many thanks to Anthony for joining us there. So, as that discussion showed, there's an awful lot going on at the second tier, and a lot of politics, I'm sure, will need to be a lot of discussions, and I think everything is still up in the air. But I think the thing that worries me more than anything, and Andy, I'll come to you first, is now there was a big gulf anyway, but now there's an enormous gulf between the Elite League and the second level, because you're going from 14 imports to 2 imports.
Yeah, it does seem to be, and I do think that is a worry. Naturally, you sort of feel that it might be good in a sort of up and coming Brits perspective, but I think ultimately there's too much of a gulf. I don't think that will be overly beneficial, because ultimately yes, these Brits will be getting ice time and they'll be getting plenty of it, but they won't be having the sort of the amount or the quality imports, to sort of train against and play against, that it becomes sort of counterproductive in that sense, that they're not getting that training, that kind of caliber, and those kind of games, and obviously it does seem now that there is going to be quite a staggering leap from both ways. You think of even someone, take David Clark for instance. Obviously, he's one of our guys, and he's going to be coming towards the end of his career. There's always been talk about him wanting to go back to Peterborough and play some games in Peterborough. Now, I'm not being funny, but David Clark in that league, one, seems like a waste from our perspective, but two, you would think that it would be far too easy for him, and that's no disrespect to the people down there, but this is a real top quality goal scoring British player of the past 10 years, and you just sort of think that the drop and the gulf going that way when players do look to retire or sort of take it easier, shall we say, is pretty big. But obviously then on the flip side, you've got some young kids that will be playing some decent minutes down there, and I'm sure they'll be doing very well, but then expecting to progress and come up into the Elite League, and obviously probably will more than likely be on reduced minutes, but they will be expected to make the most of those reduced minutes, and obviously it's sort of becoming such a gulf and such a gap now that it could potentially become a little bit of an issue.
Yeah, it's sad, really. I've been to watch Hull a couple of times purely because I missed the trips up there, and I'm looking at the NIHL sort of bit now on the one of the websites, and do they have promotion and relegation between Division 1 and Division 2?
Yes.
Or is it so obviously you've got the Lions in North 2, but then I noticed that the likes of Telford, for instance, where else? Basingstoke, Hull themselves, Peterborough, they've all got NIHL teams already. So what happens to those teams? Do they just fold, or do they incorporate in them?
I think that's still to be discussed, but I think from what Anthony said in his interview, I think what will happen was some will actually apply to the lower level, and the EPL team will be in Division 1, and there'll be a realignment of the leagues.
It's all a bit of a mess, really, and it is sad, and it doesn't bode well for the future. And like you say, it's such a massive gap now between the Elite League and the next tier down. I know ages ago a couple of years ago there was mooted the under 21s league, weren't they, or something? That's
under 20s, yeah.
Yeah, that's disappeared. There is
an under 20s league. There's an under 20s league in Scotland and also in England. because there's the playoffs for that this weekend between the Scottish and the English team. But yeah, I know what you mean. It's like not many people seem to know about it.
No. Well, maybe now's the time that if the Elite League were ever going to invest in the future of the game, maybe now's the time to sort of get that promoted a bit more. And because, like you say, there is, where do you go? You are playing part. I mean, the Lions team, for instance, is made up with largely pay-to-play players.
Yes.
Well, we'll see.
They are all pay-to-play. So
they're all pay-to-play. Well, there you go. There's going to be a massive gulf between just teams in that league now, never mind going up to the Elite League.
Okay. Tina, anything to add?
No, I don't think so. I think the guys have kind of covered it. Just to sort of emphasise a point that I made earlier on, Richard Grieveson's job just got a whole lot more difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, a mammoth live podcast, first one of the off-season. There will be more coming up. Our next one will probably sometime in early June, unless something major happens between now and then. But all that's I have to say is thank you very much to Antoine Marie-Jean.
Not a problem. Take care. See you next time.
Andy Haywood.
No worries at all. Thank you for having me.
Tina Taylor.
TTFN.
And thank you very much to you for listening. We will be back sometime in June with our next off-season podcast. But until then, thanks for listening and bye-bye.